Hello, this is your host Akhil Navuluri, and welcome to the brand new episode of the Space podcast series. In this podcast episode, I'm super thrilled and honored to be collaborating with one of the most eminent and prominent industry leaders of the IT space and the Linux space, Mr. Till Kamppeter, who happens to be the co-founder and organization lead of the organization OpenPrinting, and he's based out of Vienna, Austria. So, Till, it gives me an absolute pleasure welcoming you to this podcast initiative of mine. So, Till, how are you doing, and how did you celebrate your New Year in Vienna this time?
Yes, thank you very much for inviting me to your show. And the New Year, the Christmas and New Year in Vienna, as here in Europe, most of the countries are of Christian religion. So we have Christmas, which is usually where we usually celebrate at the evening, at the Christmas Eve at 24th of December, where usually family is meeting, and one eats something nice, and the presents are given to each other, and so on, and also on the 25th, one usually meets other family. As I'm in Vienna and far away, especially from my wife's family, she's Brazilian, and also rather far away from my family. Christmas was only my wife and me, and one friend, and New Year is also celebrated. That there usually friends are meeting but there it was only my wife and me. And one thing is what happens: many people go out to the street and wants to watch the city's fireworks, but also to do fireworks by themselves. And this doing fireworks by themselves is something which I really hate on New Year's Eve, because it's very dangerous. Drunken people handling explosives and even doing very nasty stuff as throwing them at other people. And then there comes also illegal fireworks bought in neighboring countries. And so many years ago, when I still lived in Germany, New Year's Eve on the streets, when it was midnight, it was really like a war. I really did not like that.
All right.
And I hope that governments will more and more here in Europe, that governments will more and more prohibit self-made fireworks. But the problem is they are big tradition, and so it's very difficult. And then there are also economic interests, because the governments get naturally their taxes from the business of selling the fireworks.
All right. That completely gives me an insight about it. And yeah, you had a great New Year celebration with your wife and with your friends, so that's very much good to know. So till at the at the stroke of this hour, without any further ado, let's kick off with our podcast episode. All right. So Till, can you give me a timeline of your journey in the IT space?
Yes, I entered the IT space already when I was 16 years old. My very first computer was a Commodore YIC20, which had only 3.5 kilobytes of RAM for basic programs.
Okay.
It was one program did in BASIC, and it had a tape deck with normal audio tapes to save data and to load data. And this was my very first computer. I had it only for a short time, and then I got a Commodore 64. It was a little bit better, 64 kilobyte of RAM, not only 3.5. And it had also a floppy disk drive. This old 5.25 of an inch, not the small plastic ones, which you probably know, the 3.5. Yes, this was my very first experience, I was at high school. I learned also the programming language Pascal at high school. And when I was in, this was back in 1986. And in 1989, when I finished high school and started studying physics, I got my first PC. And it was 640 kilobytes of RAM, and it had 30 megabytes of hard disk, and the operating system was MS-DOS. Not denial of service. One could think by the speed of this PC that it was denial of service, but DOS meant in that time disk operating system. And then these were my start into IT and programming. So I learned programming. And when I did my PhD from 1996 to 2000, from 1997 on, I was system administrator in a network which consisted of only Unix workstations, SGI Indie and Digital Alpha workstations. And there were only a few. We were many more people than we had workstations. So many had in their office only a dumb terminal or even no screen and had to go to our computer room to use a computer. And to improve on this, we introduced PCs, but to neatly integrate in this network, we did not use them with Windows, but with Linux. And this was my start into free and open source software. I've installed SUSE Linux 5.1 on these PCs. And there it was really the thingy that many PC parts do not work or need manual interaction. It was not that you could take nearly any PC and simply slap Ubuntu on it, as it is nowadays, and it is nowadays very easy. There you had often to do things manually to even to recompile the kernel. I've also several times recompiled the kernel, and many of these PCs, or most of them, they were running with my own corrected recompiled kernel to make certain hardware working. And we also had to take care when we bought stuff that they are in the list of supported devices, and of some of the PCs we had to for example, to replace the graphics card or something like that, so that it worked with Linux. And they had typically 16 megabytes of RAM. And one had only 8 megabytes of RAM, and we ran desktops on them. It was not such sophisticated desktop as GNOME and KDE nowadays. It was FWM, window managers were they called, because they were mainly taking care that you had applications in Windows and have only given very basic desktop control, like a launcher or so. Okay. And yes, this was the time, my first contact with free software. In that time, I had also installed KDE for the first time. It was the first idea of KDE came up in 1996, and in 1998 or 1999, I've installed KDE on an SGI Indie. And it worked, and it was not too slow. It really worked, and it was a nice desktop. And you know what the K in KDE means? The person who gave the first idea of making this desktop, this Qt-based desktop environment, KDE, in 1996, in his first posting, he called it the cool desktop environment, where nice cool is written with K.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yes, yes. And so I got into free software, and I was not only using and installing and administering it, also on the server, we had also mail server and so things like that. I was also starting to contribute to it. We got a CD writer, which was something completely new in that time. And this CD writer was there in our computer room, but the software for it, there was, it was not working in a multi-user environment. It was XCD-host. It was a free graphical user interface to easily control a CD writer, a CD burner. And I have modified this so that it worked in the multi-user environment and sent the patches to the author, and the author has accepted it. And this was my very, very first contribution. And so I got enthusiastic with free software.
Okay.
And the next step is how I got into printing. It was also in for the system administration in my PhD time.
Mm-hmm.
We had several printers, black and white PostScript laser printers, and the printing environment in that times was LPD, the line printer daemon. I hope you know what a line printer is. I do not know how old you are. It's a printer which prints like a typewriter, only fixed letters and not any graphics.
Hmm. Got it.
Yes, yes. And these were in the computing centers. The line printers were big things, loud and heavy, because they were constructed to print a full line at a time, not only one letter like a typewriter does. And Unix was made for the data centers and so they had the line printer daemon, and this line printer daemon was to pick up the print jobs, which were usually just text, and these print jobs were printed on the line printer. So you did not need any special parameters like resolution or tray or duplex or so. Paper came from a long, it was endless paper, which comes from a Z-folded stack, so no special paper handling needed. And this was how printing worked. And then there came the PostScript printers, which were not well supported by the LPD. Then there came things like then GoScript was taking care for non-PostScript printers to turn PostScript into the printer's language. And then there was a magic filter, which and similar things which integrated GoScript and PostScript printing and so forth with LPD, so that you could print on graphical printers with LPD. But it was all very much not easy to do. You needed really a system administrator, an expert, to set up printers with that. And my predecessors, to make printing easy for our users who are physicists and not really IT experts, they wrote some very obscure scripts so that with command line options, one could easily address the two trays and the duplex unit of the printer. So two trays, upper, lower, and duplex unit was no duplex, duplex short edge, duplex long edge. And so that they succeeded with scripting that one could convey these options to the printer. And this was our printing environment. Then there came a color laser printer, which was more complex, and it came with proprietary print dialogues, but only for the commercial Unixes, not for Linux. And so we could only print on this by SSHing into one of the workstations. Fortunately, the home directories of the users came from a file server, and so they were the same on all the systems. So you could SSH around and had always your home directory at hand. And so this way one could print on the color laser printer. It was actually PostScript, but I didn't know it in that time, because in that time when we got it, I was not already into administrating the printing stuff. It somehow worked, and so I never was doing anything with it. But in 2000, I read in the German Linux magazine. There's also an English Linux magazine. They come from the same publisher. An article about CUPS. In the beginning of 2000, the printing system CUPS, Common Unix Printing System, came out, the version 1.0 from the author Michael Sweet. And I read about this in the magazine, and it promised that it is very easy to get all the pipes and whistles of PostScript printers working. And then I tried it out, installed it on our network, and we could not only fully control the two black and white laser printers, but I discovered that the color laser printer was also PostScript, and they all have a so-called PPD file, PostScript printer description, which describes all the options and capabilities of the printer. They come just with a Windows driver, and CUPS uses these files. And so I could make all the three printers fully working. Even the color laser printer could now print from Linux with all functionality. But it all worked only by the command line. And you had to enter a lot of options on the command line. The command line could get quite long if you want to do some more sophisticated things. And this was also not, it was better than before, but it was not that easy for our physicists to work with that. And so I discovered, so Michael Sweet even made a print dialogue, a graphical one, but it was commercial. You had to buy it. And so, but it brought me onto the idea to write one on my own. And so I wrote, within 10 days or so, a print dialogue, which supported all the CUPS functionality, and you could click together which printer you wanted to print on and with which options. And I need perhaps 10 days to program it. And then I thought, it's not only good for us, it's good for everyone. I made it available for download, and I announced it on Freshmeet, which was in that time the site for announcing free software projects and releases. And with this Freshmeet announcement, the author of the Linux magazine article saw it. He works as a office printing consulting company for Unix-based office printing. And his company had a booth on the Linux Tag, the biggest Linux conference in that time in Europe and Germany. And he invited me to show off the dialogue on his company's booth. And I went there. It was in the beginning of July 2000, showed it off. I went to the booths of the distributions naturally to try to advertise to them CUPS and and how nicely one prints with CUPS. And SUSE and Red Hat were not very much convinced and interested in that, but Mandrake Soft in Paris, Mandrake Linux, later they were called Mandriva. Yes. They were really fascinated of it. On the booth, they told me everything about their office and their ways how they make packages. And then there was, on one of the 4 conference days, was also a social event in the evening, and they were all crowding on me and telling about about their distro, their office, their workday, and everything. And a week after the Linux talk, I got an email, an invitation to work there. And so in the beginning of July, I was on the Linux talk, and 1st of August, I lived in Paris. Not knowing any word of French, but in the company, once there were many international employees, so one was speaking English there, the standard language of free software. And the company was still in a very healthy state, so they sent us to school in the evening after the workday to learn French. So in the remaining 4 months of 2000, I learned French, not very much, but good enough for the everyday conversation in the city, for administration, banks, stores, and so on. There I was then able to speak French, but I did not speak so well French for talking with my colleagues, and so I always preferred English. And so don't try to speak French with me. And yes, so I was in Paris, and my task was to switch Mandrake Linux from LPD to CUPS to end these dark years of LPD. And I succeeded to make this happen for their next release, which was October, November or so. It was rather quick how I succeeded with it. And it was not just putting cups into RPM packages. The biggest challenge was that Mandrake Linux was using LPD, magic filters, and so on. They had a nice printer setup tool, which made it rather easy, not perfectly easy, for the user to set up printers, and many printers worked. And I had to take care that they all work with cups, but cups uses drivers differently. No magic filters or so. Cups does it by itself. And for handling capabilities, it uses PPD files, not only for PostScript printers, but for every printer. Only that when the printer has no PostScript, the PPD file gets an extra line telling which filter to call to make the PostScript converted to the printer's language. And so I had to somehow get these PPDs. It was impossible to write them all by hand, and PPDs are very handwriting unfriendly format. But fortunately, there was some site called linuxprinting.org, and there was some guy who made a database how well which printer works with Linux and with which driver, and an auto generator for PPD files. And I made use of it, only the database was not fully populated with printer capabilities to make PPD files for everything. So I started to ask the author a lot to fill up this database to that every printer works. And he told that he has not enough time and gave me full write access to the database. So I filled it up. And this way I succeeded in this I think it was 7.2 or so of Mandrake Linux. In this October-November 2000 release, that all the printers which worked with the previous last LPD-based version of Mandrake Linux, that these printers worked also with the first CUPS-based one. I also had to modify the printer setup tool so that it works with cups. I'd even modified in a way that it worked with both LPD and cups, and one could switch for the case that one or another user would say, "Oh my, with cups it does not work anymore," so that they could step back to the LPD. And this was the first time on the world that a distro was working with cups, and users could easily install printers with it. And after that, I also went to conferences and was evangelizing cups. And I was giving talks, I was giving workshops, even full day workshops on how to install cups, how to set up printers, how to set up a print server, up to how to even set up a print server for Windows clients with cups and Samba, and Samba providing the Windows drivers for the Windows clients. And they all I partially did together with that person who made this Linux magazine article, which I mentioned in the beginning.
Yes.
And so I made cups known to the world on these conferences. Also on the Linux tag from 2001 to 2006, from 2001 to 2006, I made every year organized a booth about printing with Linux. And so I made printing known.
Okay.
Showed how easy it is. Also, I by myself have made it easier by generating the PPT files. In this way, the other distros were following. And so cups turned into the standard. And this way, I got deep into free software. I got important. I was the one who made printing just work for everyone. And now fast forward to 2006. In 2006, there I was, yes, 2000, yes. I was, for the first time, there was one thing, in 2004 and 2005, I was on a conference in France, and there I have organized hackfests for Linux printing. And the first one, 2004 in Bordeaux, it worked very, very nicely. We get also printers landed from sponsors, and I got really many people who were important with printing together, even from over the ocean, from the United States. And this was great. And so I did it again on the next edition of the same conference in 2005. It was, I think, in Dijon, but I'm not sure. And this was a complete disaster because it was not well organized, the conference. And so I did not get well supported. And I was very disappointed about it was going there, and we all from the Hackfest were very disappointed. And so shortly after that, I had a booth in San Francisco on the Linux World Expo, and there we met again, and there we told we need to have an annual meeting. And also in the United States, because the most are from the United States. And so in 2006, I was organizing the first Open Printing Summit in Atlanta, Georgia, at the RICO facility. We had also some guy from RICO, and he has provided us a facility. And so we had a meeting, and one thing was the PPD file the server, which with a database for generating the PPD file, was always running in the house of the original author of the system. And with the time, there came official PPDs from RICO were uploaded to that server, and then I told to the people there, we cannot go on this way that official PPD files come from the living room of some arbitrary person. We need to move that into a data center. And Debian founder Jan Murdoch, the Jan is the Jan of Debian also. He and his girlfriend founded Debian, and the Deb comes from her. And so the Debian founder, he was working at the Free Standards Group, and he did not only offer me to host linuxprinting.org, he also wanted to host me. He provided me a full-time employment at the Free Standards Group to manage OpenPrinting. For the name OpenPrinting, the OpenPrinting was founded on some meeting we had in the US, some small printing summit, which I think VA Linux in that time in the US hosted it. There we have founded OpenPrinting as an organization to create free software printing standards, APIs, libraries, and we had then every week some phone meetings to develop these APIs. But these APIs never materialized into libraries. But this started the organization on the name OpenPrinting. And the people were from printer manufacturers, from software providers, people who are also organized in the Printer Working Group, which is a consortium of printer manufacturers and software industry about standards of printing. They, for example, are maintaining as their main project the Internet Printing Protocol, IPP. And IPP was created by Michael Sweet, the author of CUPS, with some others in the late 90s. And this is the base of CUPS. So CUPS is completely IPP based.
All right.
And IPP turned into the gold standard of printing. But it was a little bit later in history, so let us get back to 2006, and there I got a full-time employment to work for the Free Standards Group, and it was very, very important for me as Mandrake Soft from 2001 on was in a very bad healthy state. They were hopping from one venture capitalist to the next one, always fearing to go bust. So my French courses ended, and also any other bigger investments they had done formerly, and also I never got a rise. I had the same salary from 2000 to 2006. So my salary was rather low, and it was great that I could escape, that I could do my work. And I was at Mandrake Soft, I got the full liberty to manage printing and in general, not only for Mandrake Linux. I was usually packaging for Mandrake Linux, but I was managing printing for Linux in general. And they gave me the full liberty, and they have let me to go to all the conferences and so. And so from this side, it was great. And so I was then switching to the Free Standards Group. Okay. So, and only with that, I had already doubled the salary.
All right.
Yes. But on the Linux Tag 2006, in the middle of 2006, 2 months after my first Open Printing Summit, there was the Linux Tag again. I had my booth, and there was also an Ubuntu booth. Ubuntu is born 2004, by the way. So Ubuntu was still a baby, and it was a very small company, and all was like a family, and new employees were handpicked by Mark Shuttleworth, the founder of Ubuntu and Canonical, on conferences, mainly Debian developers in the beginning, because Ubuntu is derived from Debian. And so in 2006, I bumped into Mark Shuttleworth, and he told me, "Thank you very much for your great work on printing. Do you like to work with us?" And I said yes. And then it was for me to manage how to deal with 2 full-time work offers to make the best out of that. I could not accept the two offers in full time, because then probably I would not work enough for each of them,
That is
or
right.
I would take money twice for the same work, and this could lead to some problems for me.
Absolutely.
And yes, and so I was negotiating them against each other, telling to Mark how much money I got offered from the Linux, from the free standards group and so on. So with this, I haggled up a little bit the salary. And in the end, for the managing the 2 jobs, I decided on going full time on the free standards group and being a 1/3 of the normal work time contractor at Canonical. So I had 4/3 of a job, more than double the money per month as at Mandrake before, and it was great for me. And I could just continue what I was all the time doing. And so continue on my dream job. And I had the full liberty.
Okay.
So no boss telling me what I had to do. For Canonical, naturally, I had to do the packaging for Ubuntu, the integration of printing in Ubuntu. And otherwise, I was taking care of open printing and printing in general for all free software. I was continuing to go to conferences, that time then reimbursed by the Free Standards Group. In 2007, the Free Standards Group was merging with the OSDL, Open Source Development Laboratory, to form the Linux Foundation. With this, I automatically transferred into the Linux Foundation, but continuing the same work. And later on, unfortunately, the Linux Foundation was cutting my job to 1/2. But fortunately, as I was also at Canonical, Canonical was winding me up to 2/3. And so it got compensated more or less. The total of my employment was still a little bit more than 1, 2/3 plus 1/2. And later on in 2012, I got a full-time employment at Canonical. And so I was just full-time at Canonical from 2012 to 2019. But I was just continuing the work which I did all the time, only the sources of payment have changed. And this went nicely up to the year 2025, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yes. When I got laid off from Canonical. Yes, this was more or less the history.
All right.
How I got into it and how it went on. Now, with Canonical, it was all the time. It was great to work there in the beginning. No boss was telling me what I had to do.
Yep.
So I could manage my work. I could manage open printing, and I also could go to many conferences. And they reimbursed my travel and my hotel, and they also have let me go to the conferences and so on. I was since 2006, I was all the time working from home by 100%. So no need to go to any office, no hybrid, but just working from home. Especially Canonical is the pioneer of work from home. Right from 2004 on, when they started, they were practically all work from home. In the beginning, they had a small office. Some teams were working in the office, but the majority, especially the developers, they were all working from home. And with the pandemic, they have also wound down office work completely. They have moved to a tiny office, which is only for meetings and small conferences and so. And practically all the work is done from home. Perhaps there are some few working there for some administration, or perhaps only those working there who are taking care of the facility. I don't know. So Canonical was a real work from home company. They had naturally all the infrastructure very well organized. And twice a year, one was meeting physically for a week. In the beginning, it was the Ubuntu Developer Summit.
Okay.
And their one was not meeting only internally, but also with the community, and in the form of an unconference meeting, BOFs. One was planning the next release, as there was every half year an Ubuntu release. This was stopped, I think, in 2012 or so. They turned it online, which did not work out. And then there was nothing, and then they started internal sprints, internal meeting, which were only Canonical people every half year for a week, which was not so nice as having the meetings with the community. And then there were the every half year meetings. One was all meeting, planning the next release, sitting together in a team room, and also having once a day for half an hour or so lightning talks and so on, and going out in the evening for dinner and for beer and so on. It was all nice thing, meeting the people. One got good friends already by the UDSs, and afterwards also by the sprints and so. And it was great to work there. But in the recent years, they got very corporate formalisms. They started peer-to-peer evaluations. They did this model that there were 2 week units of work, and there was a planning meeting in the beginning, stand-up meeting 3 times a week, and a results presenting meeting in the end, and then they started also to have a promotion scheme that you could apply for a higher degree of job, and then when you passed, you got promoted, and in the higher level, you got a higher salary. And so I even got one, or succeeded once to get a promotion. And so, but in the end, it got so much that in the peer-to-peer, that it was not compatible with my external work on OpenPrinting anymore. In the peer-to-peer, you need other people voting on you, evaluating you. For me, this did not work. Too few people were evaluating me. And you know, when you have an experiment and you take too few samples, you get a huge error and you do not get representative results. And this happened. This led me to not getting a bonus in 2024. No ways, no compensation for the inflation even. And to getting laid off in 2025 in May, because they were very strictly adhering to the results. There were threshold percentages, who gets into the lowest that percent, does not get a raise, or perhaps there's even a percentage threshold, I do not know, for getting laid off. And this was then the end. And also in the last years, when it got so corporate, people got more and more uncontent with their jobs. So several people were not content anymore, and therefore they were leaving. And some important and good people were leaving our team, and the climate, the work climate, was not so good anymore in the last years. And this means now that I'm not employed anywhere anymore, and my work, I'm leading OpenPrinting.
All right.
So on LinkedIn, you see I'm at OpenPrinting.
Yes,
as the organization lead. And what I was all the time, but now it's my official job. And for now, for making a living of it, I need financiation, I need sponsors, investors in my work. And so after getting laid off, I got to link into the social media, LinkedIn and Mastodon, and told about about this incident. And on Mastodon, I asked the people to boost, and I got 1,200 boosts. And on LinkedIn, I naturally filled in my profile and so on, and I made a lot of contacts. I invited important people to be a connection of me, and this way I got in contact with a sovereign tech agency.
Okay.
And yes, and there a person invited me for a video meeting. We talked about my situation and so on, and he told me to make a plan of what I'm working throughout 1 year, how many hours I need for what, and so on. And based on this, 2 weeks later, I got the grant from this sovereign tech agency. They are investing a good amount of money in me for covering me until the end of 2026, and converted the full the allotted amount to this time. My monthly income is now a little bit more than what I had in the end at Canonical.
Yeah.
So that my living is assured for this year. But I need now I need also to make OpenPrinting an official sub-organization of the Linux Foundation, so that I can handle money and that I can get sponsors to assure, because one does not know whether one get renewed at the sovereign tech agency, to assure that I have a living and that printing will just work also in the future. Many people are telling me on conferences, thank you very much for your printing work, and many even telling it works better than under Windows or Mac.
Absolutely.
And I want it to stay that way. I want that it is a little bit like when you're flying a fighter jet, suddenly you run out of fuel, later from Canonical, and then I've done my Mayday calls on the social media, on Mastodon and LinkedIn, in the hope to get mid-air refueling. So that I don't need to trigger the ejection seat, meaning getting any job for my survival, and then the plane OpenPrinting will crash. But fortunately, then came the sovereign tech agency and gave me the mid-air refueling, and so the flight will continue.
That's a pretty good journey. And, one thing, till that I can see in your journey is that, there's a lot of passion, determination, and then that willingness, to try new things. So I really, really was impressed by that.
Yes. What did you say?
I just was saying that, when I heard, this timeline of yours entirely, I could see a lot of determination, willingness and passion throughout. And that has actually captured that entire thing of you, and that actually impressed me.
Yes, and many people when I got laid off, they cannot understand why that happened, how such an important person who does such important work for the whole free software and open source ecosystem, how they can lay off this person. This would be more or less a shot in their foot.
That is true. Absolutely true.
Yes. Imagine that I had really to take up an arbitrary job and could not take care of OpenPrinting anymore. And so I got really something like 30 emails from colleagues when I announced there that I'm leaving. And also a similar amount also in the internal chat of Canonical.
Okay.
Yes, and so it was really, it was really hurting me a lot, and then I needed to somehow recover from it, and now it worked all very well, and so I'm mostly recovered, but now with making OpenPrinting an official organization, I hope that I can then survive and go on and do and take care of printing.
Got it. Yes, please. So yes, so that really sums up the point, Till. Now, Till, what are your roles and responsibilities? Being the co-founder and organization lead of your organization, OpenPrinting.
Yes. In OpenPrinting, it is current in the beginning. Yes, it is currently. I am, in short, doing everything to make printing with Linux just work. And what I have all done in that time was once, naturally, because I was employed at distros, to package it for one distro. And with this, I also did some kind of pilot of distro integration, because with this packaging, I made some kind of example for other distros. And also there was a part of my work, for example, in the beginning, Mandrake software, the PPDs, which all the distros could use. And then I was also always communicating with different, especially desktop environment developers, about print dialogues and printer setup tools, to guide them to make printer setup tools which work with cups in the beginning, and print dialogues, and to push them that they do that. And also when things changed, when we in 2006, when I had my first OpenPrinting summit, when we switched from PostScript as the standard print job format to PDF as the standard print job format, to push forward all the projects that we are switching, that the apps produce PDF instead of PostScript. And also I was communicating mostly via the PWG, the printer working group, with printer manufacturers about PPD files and printer drivers, and help them designing printer drivers and telling them what is important there, and so helping them to get printer drivers. And I was also naturally on conferences a lot to tell about printing with Linux and to demonstrate it, to show how easy it is, and also to find people who work together with me and contribute to open printing. As you must know, that printing is some important piece of infrastructure, like a wastewater system, but it's not attractive. And so developers are not voluntarily running after me and want to work with me on printing. And so I have to do a lot of marketing and a lot of evangelism and so on to get people who are contributing to printing with Linux. I was also supporting that in the old times, there were printer driver projects like Gutenprint. So I was also supporting these people and guiding these people to make the drivers that one could easily package them in distros and so on. And
Okay.
yes. And one thing is, because of getting for the coding of cups was all the time practically alone by Michael Sweet. It seems that Michael Sweet is not a big team worker, also not really the person who is marketing stuff. He never went to conferences. So he's a he's a really great engineer. His coding is very clean. He documents everything. He does complete CI testing for it. And so one does not need to complain about anything at Mike Suite. It just works. And so as the lead of open printing, I don't need to manage Mike Suite. I simply get supply, we at Open Printing simply get supplied with cups from Mike Suite. I was also somewhat taking care of code of cups, filters, and so on, and other projects. But with all the time, as I was mainly doing the work of community communications and marketing manager, and also coordinating for integrating stuff, talking with all the stakeholders so that everything gets well integrated. Also did actually write some code, but not much. From the coding side, I'm more and more like Linus Torvalds. I give ideas and other people are coding them.
Absolutely.
And yes. I don't know whether perhaps this work, which I'm actually doing, which is very, very important, that printing just work, how well the responsible people at Canonical have understood it or not understood it, and which also could have led to the situation. And one important thing which I've started back in 2008 to get more developers is that I've started to mentor at the Google Summer of Code, to get a mentoring organization in the Google Summer of Code. As I was always, I was in 2008, I was even full-time employee of the Linux Foundation. And I got even a fellow of the Linux Foundation. The Linux Foundation has 8 fellows, 8 important people who got this this status. And one of them is Linus Torvalds, another is Greg Kroah-Hartmann, who is also important for the kernel. And I'm also one of them. So
okay, that's good to know.
So the Linux Foundation honored my work very well. And I have, as employee of the Linux Foundation, started the participation as mentoring organization in the Google Summer of Code as the Linux Foundation and not as just OpenPrinting. And I've continued that all the time, even after not being employed anymore by the Linux Foundation, which gave me at the Google Summer of Code the status of an umbrella organization. So that I got more important and impactful there. And also, I was naturally helping many smaller subgroups of the Linux Foundation to also participate and not need to compete for a spot as a mentoring organization.
Got it.
And I was also an OpenPrinting as one of the sub-organizations of that umbrella organization as the Google Summer of Code. I was mentoring for OpenPrinting every year. In the beginning, I had only very few students because I did not have a really good selection process and so, and was only picking up applications which I got during the application window. I had only perhaps two or three, and in the worst year, only one student. In 2015, Avik Basu, who worked in India at Lexmark, joined OpenPrinting, and he helped me with the Google Summer of Code by asking around at universities and IITs and colleges in India. And then we got something like 5 or 6 contributors every year. This was great. Naturally, they were mostly from India. And so we got a lot of good contributions. Yes. And this helped a lot. And so I had several people coding. Unfortunately, not many were sticking with us. Many just made their project because they wanted to have a point for their CV. Others were continuing with us, but when they finished their course, they were starting a day job, which took their time, and then they were not continuing anymore with us, unfortunately. So only very few sticked with us, most unfortunately not.
Got it. That's pretty interesting, Till. So, Till, you just gave me an understanding about, about the opportunity open source with respect to India. Now, in a deep note, would you like to, shed some spotlight, into your initiative Opportunity Open Source and its collaborations, with different IITs, universities, and colleges in India that happens to be my home country?
Yes. And as my colleague Avik Basu has always asked around at the colleges and universities and so on, and we had got many Google Summer of Code contributors that way. Back in 2019, he came to the idea, let us meet these contributors personally and to advertise our Google Summer of Code activity personally in a small one afternoon meeting. And for that, he has selected the IIT Mandi. He did it alone without me, the IIT Mandi.
Okay.
And he has traveled to there. It is not an easy travel. The next airport from Mandi is Chandigarh, which is
Chandigarh,
6
yeah.
hours driving from there. So
Yeah.
as far as I remember, he was flying from Kolkata, where he's living, to Delhi. And from
Mhm.
there, he has taken an overnight bus around 10 hours or so
And
to
overnight bus
Mandi.
from Kolkata Road to North India, man, that is a huge, time difference.
So to get there, and then he has given one afternoon of presentation of open printing of the Google Summer of Code to the
Mm.
students of the IIT Mandi. And this way, once he met personally the students we had already from there, and he motivated more students to work with us. And so we got even more from IIT Mandi in the following years. It was 2019, it was the year before the pandemic. Then we had, after that, 2020 and 2021 was pandemic. Google Summer of Code, as being completely remote, was continuing full steam, at least in terms of production, not in terms of the mentor summits. They did not take place in that time. And after the pandemic, it was already 2023, Avi told we should again do what we did in 2019, but this time with me. So Avik and me together meet personally with the students to go to Mandi together. And then in the meantime, Avik was also not only engaging in printing, but also in the Zephyr real-time operating system for IoT. And with this, and also
Yeah.
to make the meeting more attractive, we concluded that we should not do a one afternoon presentation of open printing in Google Summer of Code. We should make
Mm.
it an actual conference, a 2-day conference. That we do a CFP, that we get some speakers and that we do not only talk about printing in Google Summer of Code, but about a wider range about free software in general. And so this was the beginning of the Opportunity Open Source. And so we have run the first Opportunity Open Source in the IIT Monday. The name, by the way, I created it. And it was a success. We had something like 100 attendees. They
Mhm.
liked it a lot. We had not only talks, we have even given interactive workshops.
Yeah.
There was one workshop about Zephyr, and there was another workshop about snap packaging. The snap packaging workshop, I was the speaker. I've given it a lot on different conferences because in my Canonical, I was still at Canonical at that time. And in my Canonical time, I engaged a lot with Snap because I was snapping cups and so on. And this made me creating the idea of Snap workshops, which I started in the Ubuntu Summit 2022. And so so we had a nice little conference at Monday. We have also live streamed it and recorded it, and we had also some remote speakers. Michael Sweet was speaking remotely, and also the one who was hosting the Zephyr workshop was speaking remotely. And and uh, and one and but there was also one person knowing Zephyr on site, and he was then helping the people on the exercises. And so it was a success. People liked
Mhm.
it. And then we decided to make it an annual establishment and not doing it every year in Mandi, but going around in India.
All right.
Yes. And the next two editions were both in IIT Kanpur. And they were already bigger. We had 2 full days, not 1.5. It's in Mandi. We had a third day, which was only a hackathon, but 2 full days of conference with talks and workshops. And we had 3 rooms, a plenary room, a breakout room, and a workshop room, full of talks and workshops. Also, we had done a CFP, and this way we got the speakers. The local organizers had also found local companies as sponsors to carry the costs, especially of accommodation and speaker accommodation and meals and things like that, and also the costs for the fees for the rooms and things like that. And so it really established into a nice conference. And next week, or perhaps in the next few weeks, I will post a call for locations for this year's edition.
Got it.
And there are some people who already talked with me who are interested in making a bid for the location.
That's a pretty interesting insight, Till. So yes, Till. So basically, that's a pretty good insight, and that gives a complete idea about it. So listeners, I mean, there is more to mine and Till's conversation, and we'll be back with the part 2 of our conversation pretty soon. So till then, keep listening. Goodbye, stay tuned, and au revoir. Thank you.